Right around the time he died, my father said to me, Jackie, you can't outrun your fate, but you sure as hell gotta try. I didn't really know what he meant back then. See, there was something inside me. Something terrible. Waiting to get out. And when it did, it made me watch the only thing I ever cared about. Get her brains blown out right in front of me.
There you go, Jackie. That's the type of intensity I want to start every video out with. Just straight on sadness, you know? Welcome back to another episode of Does It Deserve a Sequel? The game that I'm highlighting is Darkness 2. And I'll be honest with everyone, I really didn't think the Darkness 2 was going to be made. Mainly because when the first game was released in 2007, I didn't think it was going to be successful in the slightest because you're pretty much adapting from a little-known comic book series, In the Darkness, which is really good, by the way. It's set in the Witchblade universe. And the studio behind the game was Starbreeze. Their most recent project was the Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, which, by the way, was a really good game. Huge surprise. And is probably better than any of the Chronicles of Riddick movies. I'm just saying, I love Pitch Black. I liked Riddick. But I was not a big fan of Chronicles of Riddick, and when Escape from Butcher Bay came out, I was shocked. That game is amazing. It is so much fun. But when your follow-up is this little-known comic book property, and a lot of people are just kind of seeing what it's about, it was a surprise hit. Sold well over 1 million copies. Was beautiful visually, especially when you're considering that it came out in early PS3, early Xbox 360 days. And it had featured a really strong, compelling narrative, strong characters all around. It dealt with themes that I don't think a lot of games were trying to approach at that time. And it just nailed it. Really fun game. A little bit on the short side, but it was one of those titles where you felt really good when it came to like the thought of a sequel. And unfortunately, Starbreeze did not make The Darkness 2. Instead, it was Digital Extremes. And it didn't come out for another 5 years. So whatever momentum The Darkness had created, 2K had killed by just delaying this game until 2012. And if you're looking at this footage, you're going to see screenshots of The Darkness, and then you're going to have footage of The Darkness 2 being played in the background. You're going to notice that the entire visual style has changed completely. Gone is this realistic, gritty aesthetic, and in its place is this comic book cel-shaded style, which I feel holds up really well, but I think surprised everyone when all the marketing and promotion came out for the game, and people were like, wait, what is this? And I think for those of us who had played the original, we were excited to see what Jack Estacado was going to get into, like how much of the comic book was going to be adapted. But the problem was the game didn't sell well at all. Like, at all. I've looked up through a number of different websites, and it just might have sold a quarter of what the original Darkness sold, and that's a recipe for death. And that's a shame, because the Darkness 2 is one of those games where I feel like if it just had been marketed better, or maybe if Starbreeze had handled the sequel, that maybe, just maybe, we'd be talking about the Darkness 3 and talking about revitalizing this franchise and rebooting it. But unfortunately, we're not. We're here, and this is more likely going to fall into the realm of it just being a pipe dream. And that's super unfortunate. One of the things I really appreciate about The Darkness 2 is just how uncompromisingly brutal it is, especially in regard to its visual style. I really feel like Digital Extremes probably wanted to make The Darkness 2 its own game, and I'm completely appreciative of that. And they were kind of thrown this really difficult job of following up a really solid title that had a great story, non-linear gameplay, and I think for the most part, they did a great job. I think the campaign is so much fun, even if it is really short. It's only like 5 hours long. But I really feel like they did an excellent job of taking Jackie Estacado and further developing his character and seeing him trying to fight the darkness, this ancient demonic entity that lives in his bloodline, and watching him trying to constantly fight against this, this force that's always in his ear, always telling him to unleash the darkness, You need me. You can't get anywhere without me. And it's really shocking because Jackie would just love to give up this power. And he says it all the time. He doesn't want the darkness at all because it's constantly getting in the way of when Jackie has to like get revenge on a character or get information out of certain characters. It is always trying to prevent him from learning the truth. And when he finally realizes that there is a way to get rid of the darkness just doesn't let him do it, right? Because what he finds out eventually is that the darkness has kept Jenny's soul. And all Jackie thinks about from then on out is how to get Jenny back and how to free her, because that becomes his entire goal. And he is willing to give up the darkness for that. And I really appreciate, the way that Digital Extremes handled it. I was very shocked too, because I really expected it to be lighter in tone. But just from that first monologue by Jackie, you realize very quickly that this game is not pulling any punches, and it is very brutal at times, especially when you're killing certain bosses and watching certain characters get killed or maimed. Yeah, the game does an excellent job of just continuing that really gritty, dark tone that the original had established. So before we dive into the gameplay, I just want to talk about my favorite sections of this game, and that were the mental hospital sections, because they were just masterful. I really love the fact that the darkness created this illusion and took every character that Jackie has met, whether it's characters he's killed or befriended or loved, and he puts them into this mental hospital and has Jackie go in there and try to figure out if what he's seeing and what he's experiencing in that area is real. And the crazy thing is about the mental hospital is that you can tell that Jackie starts to doubt everything when he starts to have conversations with characters, because they're all crazy and it's convincing him that he's crazy. So if you've ever seen the show Legion, it's kind of like that. Or if you've ever seen the movie One Flies Over the Cuckoo's Nest, it's like that as well. And it's just brilliant because the only character who really knows what's going on is Johnny. And Johnny is a cultist that Jackie engages with throughout the game because he has a really strong knowledge of the darkness and the Brotherhood. That's the antagonist group that's chasing you. And Johnny, just like, he's on pills, obviously, but he constantly tells Jackie it's not real. This is just the darkness trying to stop you from getting Jenny. And the thing is, I really thought that this was a way for the developers to kind of create some type of momentum for the Darkness 3, because once Jackie kills Victor and gets to the siphon, I really felt like, well, they could have Jackie at the mental hospital once again, believing that the darkness will not let him get to Jenny. But in reality, at that mental hospital, Jenny's there. She's a charge nurse, and she is just how Jackie remembers. Just this really lovely, this really warm person. And it kind of forces you, the player, to go, okay, what if this is real? So you're given a choice near the end of the game where you can either stay on the roof with Jenny and dance with her, or you could jump off. And when you jump off, you're going to dive right through and fight the darkness, and you'll help save Jenny's soul. And I really felt like I was like, they could go either way. I wouldn't have been sad either way because it was fantastic. It was so well done. And I really feel like it's just a brilliant way of showing just how devious the darkness is, how it's really going to prey on Jackie's insecurities and his trauma and his grief. And I thought that was so fascinating because the entire time Jackie does have a hard time believing that some of the things that are happening in front of him are real, but they are. The darkness is just this ancient, powerful entity that is willing to do whatever it takes to take over Jackie's body. Thought it was brilliant. All right, with that out of the way, let's talk about the gameplay. So it's a first-person shooter. It's pretty standard. You have your submachine guns, your pistols, your shotguns, your assault rifles. Jackie is able to dual wield, so you can combine a pistol and a submachine gun, that type of stuff. Pretty fun. But he's armed with a pair of demon arms. And I'm going to call them tentacles from here on out because that's pretty much what they are. And these can be used to slash enemies knock them back. They pick up various items in the environment. You can use them as projectiles. You can use them as shields. And if you use them as a shield, you can also throw them. Generally, if you hit someone with a projectile from the demon arms, it's like a one-hit kill unless they become one of these armored enemies. Then you have to, hit them once with your demon arm or tentacle and then kill them. You can also use your tentacles to grab shields from enemies, kind of stagger them a little bit, and then you can do a ton of damage to them. Very fun. My favorite part about it is that the demon arms can execute enemies. So if you hit someone with your demon arm and weaken them enough, you're going to see this outline created in the enemy, which is going to show their heart. And then at that point in time, you can grab them and then execute them. Eventually, when you're working through the skill trees, there is a demon arm power in which you can create this black hole. So in this game, when you're killing enemies and they're down the ground and you're looking to consume their heart, and that's the only way you can really heal yourself, there's going to be this kind of reddish glow to that heart. You can grab it, and then when you grab that heart, your demon arm will kind of hold it in front of you. Your tentacle's like, hey, look at this. And that's going to be your black hole. Just throw it, and it will practically kill almost any enemy within that area. It will not work on some bosses, but it is very cool to see it just take enemies, bring them in together. They're like grabbing certain things to like prevent them from being sucked in, and then the black hole will explode. Super violent, very fun. I do, however, am pretty disappointed in the skill trees because they're kind of basic. There's only certain abilities that I recommend really getting. That's mostly like the darkness powers, really stuff that's gonna work with survivability. I like one of the demon darkness powers you get is called gun channeling. So basically, what happens is that you will be able to take certain weapons and you imbue it with the darkness, and then it gives you unlimited ammo and enhanced damage, and it's for a very short time. You also have what's called the swarm, and it's like you can throw out these group of bugs and it distracts the enemy. It can also do a lot of damage to them. Enhancing those and spending points into that part of the skill tree, the dark skill tree, is very important. I always felt like in terms of when you get into these big groups, you're going to want to be able to distract enemies because you will run out of ammo very quickly. So it's very important as you're playing this game to not just get stuck into first-person shooter mode. Constantly use your tentacles. Constantly look to grab enemies and throw them at one another. Very fun. Constantly look to grab items in the environment to protect yourself, to do tons of damage. It works on bosses. It's recommended that, and this is just the cheapest thing, by the way, that you get the swarm ability very quickly because it does work on bosses. It will kind of stop them in their tracks, and it does make a lot of the fights really easy. I feel like when you're using all of your abilities correctly, you can absolutely wipe groups of enemies very quickly, and it doesn't matter what difficulty you're on. I've always felt like the game was really good at making you feel very powerful. Now, if you run into certain enemies that will pull up these massive flashlights on you, pretty much, your powers will go away, and you won't be able to heal. You won't be able to use your tentacles. So it's recommended you shoot those lights out and stuff like that. There were certain sections where I was just kind of getting frustrated because I was like, oh shit, I'm out of ammo already. But that's because I was being reckless as hell. Like, you will rarely die in this game if you play the game as intended and use all of its systems. I just felt disappointed in the skill tree a little bit because I felt like some of the abilities you had in the original Darkness were better than what you have in the Darkness 2. You also do have a Darkling, your little British dark demon buddy, who you can pick up and throw at enemies, and you can upgrade it to when he hits anything, it does like splash damage. Very funny. It's also great watching you throw him and him just like either attack and maul that person to death or just like distract them so you can shoot him off. It's very fun. With the skill trees, you get it, you earn essence. And this is where the Darkness 2 feels very arcadey in that manner, because you're going to see a lot of numbers pop in and off on the screen. But I don't think that playing through it, because it's only 5.5 hours, I don't think at any point in time did the game wear thin to me, where I was like getting impatient, like, oh, we should have had more abilities or whatever, because by the time you become acclimated and accept the things that you have and get really proficient, the game ends. So at no point in time will you ever really tell yourself, man, I wish there was more. I think there's just enough there to get you through to the end. And it's a really good time. I'm forgetting something. Oh, that's right. In addition to the campaign, there is a multiplayer mode called Vendettas. And it involves 4 hitmen. They work for Jackie. Each of them have a darkness ability, and then they all have unique weapons. The weird thing about this was it's like a tacked on mode, and it didn't make sense to add it to the game other than try to kind of cover up the fact that the campaign is only 5 hours and there's little to no replayability. The campaign itself only has like 2 moments in the game where there's like actual decision trees, I guess, or decisions you can make as the player. And one of them really doesn't impact anything. The other one obviously impacts the ending. But beyond that, you really can't play the Darkness 2 multiple times and expect different results. So if you want to see the bad ending, you could probably just load it up, complete it really quickly, and then stay dancing on the roof for Jenny, right? Have a good time with it. If not, jump off that thing and, eventually see what happens to her. I always found that to be probably the most disappointing part, was that they created this really strong, compelling narrative, but it's only 5.5 hours long. I really felt like they could have fleshed out the world, because the original Darkness was it had kind of a non-linear feel to it, because you could transfer and travel to different areas. And in the Darkness 2, it was just, hey, you're going to your mission. Cool, man. I'll hit the elevator. I'm in the mission. I'm here attacking enemies. It kind of followed you around like that, but the gameplay was so good that you really didn't notice, and the story was really well done. But I just felt like when they transferred from Starbreeze to Digital Extremes, that's probably like the biggest loss, is that you went from non-linear to like strictly linear, and that was pretty disappointing. After replaying The Darkness 2, it really gave me a newfound appreciation for Digital Extremes and their efforts, because they really did a good job with the game. Fantastic campaign. I feel like the tacked on multiplayer stuff was something that you did not need. But, looking past that, they did a really good job of kind of taking that tone and that story and then pushing it further along, and really helping to develop Jackie as well was fantastic. I just feel like leaving it on a cliffhanger for this long was maybe a little bit misguided. I think they probably believed that there would be an inkling of a chance that the game would sell well enough to, deserve a trilogy. But I couldn't see it. I think that the moment they had introduced this game with its new visual style, and the fact that it wasn't coming from Starbreeze, I think a lot of people just dropped it on site, which is sad, because they're missing out on a fantastic game. Like I said, 5.5 hour campaign. You're going to breeze through it your first try, but it is so good. And if you hadn't played the original Darkness, there is a recap in the beginning, so you don't necessarily have to play it. But if you can find a copy of the Darkness, play that game. It is so good. And it's like, it was one of the things that, Starbreeze was kind of getting known for, was creating these non-linear experiences with branching paths, because they did such a great job of adapting the Chronicles of Riddick, and they did such a great job of adapting the Darkness. And I really felt like, man, this could be a new franchise. Just unfortunate that it wasn't. And the thing is, the game ends on the cliffhanger, right? So the Darkness 2 ends with Jenny getting taken over by the Angelus, which is an entity that is on the complete opposite spectrum of the Darkness, but is pretty much as devious and as evil, honestly, as the Darkness. And Jackie's just kind of sitting there holding the bag like, what? He does the whole Jenny, no, that type of stuff, and then the game ends. I don't know if Digital Extremes thought they were going to get a chance to make a sequel. I don't know if Digital Extremes was under the impression that they were going to make maybe some DLC for some closure. None of that ever happened. And that sucks, because I really believe that this game deserved an ending, a true ending. The first game ended on a cliffhanger. The second game ended on a cliffhanger. And it was like obvious, we need a sequel to this game. But because it's been a decade, If this franchise ever comes back, which I highly doubt it will, once again, it's a pipe dream. I really, really want to see this remade. And I really want to see just how a studio could modernize this game and further expand upon the demon arms and the darkness abilities and all that type of stuff. Like, you could make a combination of the darkness 1 and 2, and I think that would be fantastic. But just kind of take out the linear portions of the darkness 2 and make it non-linear. You know, continue with that world building, continue with like being able to discuss things with characters, give a little some side missions, that type of stuff, reward the player for exploration, that type of stuff. I really feel that would be fantastic. Will it ever happen? Probably not. It's probably disappointing, but it's something that in my head after playing this game, I'm like, this is a game that deserves it more than anything. I feel like it deserves its closure, and unfortunately, it's never going to get it. That's just what happens when it comes to sales. So that kind of sucks. But I love the Darkness 2, and I'm looking forward to kind of diving into my backlog of games or library of games and kind of seeing just games that I felt like deserved a second chance or, you know, deserved a remake or a sequel. And that's why I'm making this series, and it's a lot of fun. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. Leave a comment below. Did you ever play The Darkness 2? Do you think it deserves a sequel? I mean, do you ever think it's going to get one? I don't know. But let me know. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I'll talk to you next time.